Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little black subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that black subscribe button. Really does help our audience grow, really does help our channel grow, really does help and mean more than you could possibly know. So go ahead, hit that little black subscribe button. Also, thank you to our presenting sponsor, Betfred Sportsbook and the Betfred Sportsbook app. Bet 50 on any game, get $250 in free bets. Thank you again to Betfred. Thank you again to you. Now, here's the video that you came here for. And before we put a bow on the 2022 season, let me say this. We can also start to look ahead to 2023. Just because the season ended on Monday night does not mean that we cannot start looking ahead to 2023. And so what I want to do now is do what everybody else who follows college football and loves college football and talks about college football does, which is talk about way too early top 25. So Aaron Torres Online, me, my staff, we kind of put our heads together over the last couple days in the lead up to the Georgia TCU game on Monday. And on Monday night, after the game, we did drop our way too early top 25 for 2023, essentially our first look at what the 2023 season will look like. If you love college football, if you love college basketball, these are staples of the end of the season coverage, and they're a really fun way to start to look ahead to next season. So what I want to do now, spend about 10, 12 minutes talking about the Aaron Torres Media way too early top 25 and get into really specifically the top 10 and who those teams are, I believe, at this point looking ahead to 2023. Now, before we get there, it is important to note one very simple thing, right? And that is that a lot is going to change in the world of college football between now and Labor Day when the season kicks off next year. We talk about it all the time, but in this transfer portal world, in this NIL world, in the fact that not everyone has even declared for the NFL draft yet, rosters are going to look different. Things are going to change. And so if you don't like where your team is ranked, just understand that a lot is going to change between now and the start of the season. If you go back to January of 2022, right after last season, keep in mind at this point last year, Caleb Williams wasn't officially committed to USC. Jordan Addison wasn't officially committed to USC. So a lot will change over the next couple weeks, next couple months into September. But with that said, let's get into it and let's get to the way too early college football top 25 for 2023. Let's get into it. Let's start. And number one, surprise, surprise, it may shock you. It's the Georgia Bulldogs. And here's the thing about why Georgia is number one in our way too early top 25 at Aaron Torres Online. It's not just because, oh, they're the defending champions, and until someone knocks the crown off their heads, you can't name. Like, I think that's the dumbest analysis you can possibly find. Well, they were really good last year, so that means definitively they're good next year, and we have to rank them number one until somebody beats them. No, I don't believe that is the case. What I do believe is that Georgia is the best team in the country going into next year. And you know who I kind of got the sense, being at SoFi Stadium on Monday night, also believes that Georgia has a chance to be really, really good? It's Kirby Smart. Because one thing that I said, and I talked about it on Tuesday's show, the bottom line with Georgia football is this. They just probably had the greatest season in the history of their program in 2022. And this year right now, this year was actually supposed to be the rebuilding year. Remember, this was a program that lost 15 players to the NFL draft last year, including 5 starters off the defensive side in the first round. And so last year you win a title, you lose 15 players. But the bottom line is this was actually the younger, kind of the rebuilding year for Georgia. And they actually return a ton going into next season. As I said, Kirby Smart said at the podium on Monday night, he said, bottom line, we probably weren't as talented this year as we were last year. And he basically hinted we have a chance to be really good again next year if we do all of the things that goes into having success. So what makes me so confident that Georgia will be really good? Well, Stetson Bennett is obviously gone. But one, they got about 3 or 4 really highly rated quarterbacks that have been in the program for a while waiting for their turn. On Monday night, we saw Carson Beck, the backup. He's a guy that Aaron Murray raved about on the Monday Aaron Torres pod when we had Aaron Murray on the show. And what you need to know is he's going to be surrounded with talent like every other Georgia quarterback over the last couple of years. Georgia was really quiet in the portal a year ago. They have added two of the best wide receivers in the SEC to their roster. Ra Thomas was Mississippi State's leading receiver this past season. He's going to Georgia. Dominic Lovett from Missouri, one of the top skill position guys in all of the SEC, I believe was second team all SEC this year. He's committed to Georgia. So whoever wins that starting job, and it's probably going to be Carson Beck, has plenty of talent around him. But here's the other part that's important. They return almost all of their marquee players off of the defense this year. Now, they'll lose a few guys. Jalen Carter will be a top 10 pick. Keely Ringo will probably be a first rounder somewhere, maybe even as high as the top 10. But in general, most of their best defensive players were younger guys. Smile Munden, that outside linebacker that was all over the place in both the TCU game on Monday and also the Ohio State game the other day, he's back. He's only played 2 years of college football. He ain't going anywhere. Jamon Dumas Johnson, I always trip over his name. Another elite edge rusher. He is coming back. Malachi Starks, the true freshman cornerback that we've known about since that Oregon game when he took over that game, he is coming back. And so when I look across this Georgia roster, Javon Bullard, who was phenomenal on Monday night against TCU, he is coming back. So when you look across this Georgia roster, that is the scary part. That is why they're number one. It's not about, well, they won the title this year and they won the title last year. We have to put them at number one. If I didn't think they were the best team, I wouldn't put them there. But this was supposed to be the year that you caught Georgia. Instead, they finished 15-0 and win a national championship. Georgia is our number one team going into next year. Number two, and this one is very fluid, but right now, I would say it's the Michigan Wolverines. Now, the big story there that's always subject to change is if Jim Harbaugh is going to be back as their head coach next year. If you had me bet $1 million, if you had me bet my life savings, I would venture to guess that he is not back. He seems to want back into the NFL. I think he is crazy because while if he wants to pursue NFL opportunities, I do not blame him. It just feels like this offseason specifically feels like a weird one to do it. Because next year he brings back the best team that he will ever have at Michigan, that he has ever had at least so far at Michigan, bar none. JJ McCarthy, I know it's easy to criticize him coming off of that college football playoff performance when he threw 2 interceptions, but let's not forget, JJ McCarthy also won them the Ohio State game with both his arms and his legs, 3 touchdowns passing, another touchdown rushing against Ohio State. He's the best quarterback that Jim Harbaugh's coached at Michigan. Blake Corum earlier this week announced that he is coming back. Donovan Edwards announced that he is coming back. So 2 elite running backs. Corum rushed for 1,400 yards. Donovan Edwards just under 1,000. And so I look at this Michigan team. I think Harbaugh is out of his mind to want to leave. And I'll just say it. I've said it before. Harbaugh, the jobs that he appears to be considering, whether it is the Broncos, whether it is the Panthers, whether it is the Colts, those are mediocre jobs. And if Jim Harbaugh wants a mediocre NFL job, guess what? There's going to be plenty of them next year too. I think he's crazy. Come back for one more year. Try to win a title with J.J. McCarthy. If it doesn't work out, okay. I should mention, by the way, as well, Michigan has been very successful in the portal early. 3 starting caliber offensive linemen, a starting linebacker from Nebraska who is a star. Come back for one more year, Harbaugh. You'll be the favorite to win the Big Ten. At number 3, so the number 3 and number 4 spots are very interesting for this reason. Who you pick at number 3 and number 4, in my opinion, and this is one where I kind of pulled rank on the guys that work for me. The number 3 and number 4 opinion is kind of, what do you value? Do you value what you know? Do you value returning players, or do you value the upside of the unknown? And so in this case, I prefer what I do know. And so I have the LSU Tigers at number 3 in the country. It's worth noting, I think I looked at a few top 25s after ours published. I think we're the only ones that have LSU ahead of Alabama. But what you need to know about LSU is this. Coming off a 10-win season, they beat Alabama. Now, granted, it was at home by 1 point. Easily could have lost that game. Just ask Nick Saban. He'll tell you all about it. But they returned their starting quarterback, Jaden Daniels. They returned both starting offensive tackles who were young guys still developing. They returned their best wide receiver, Malik Nabers. Kayshon Boutte is a star, but Malik Nabers was statistically better. They returned one of the elite edge rushers in college football in Harold Perkins. They returned Mason Smith, who was their best edge rusher coming into the year, who got hurt in the first game of the season. And so to me, what you have with LSU is the known, the known quantity, the known commodities, excuse me, I do understand they will have to go to Tuscaloosa. But you talk about a team. We know who the star quarterback is. We know who the star wide receiver is. We know who the offensive line talent is. We know who the defensive talent is. I have LSU at number 3, and I'm telling you, wait till the season starts. Wait till we get closer. You're going to see a lot of LSU playoff buzz, and you're going to see a lot of LSU, maybe even national championship buzz, depending on what people think of Georgia. Coming in at number 4, I kind of just hinted at it. It is Alabama. And listen, I'm not going to do anything too extreme when it comes to Alabama. Okay. If you think Alabama's number 2 behind Georgia, I'm not going to fight you. If you think they're number 4, number 5, I'm not going to fight you either, because what you need to know about Alabama is just think about what they lost. They lost Bryce Young, best quarterback outside of Caleb Williams, probably in college football this year. They lost Will Anderson, the best edge rusher in college football this year. They lost their best skill position player in Jahmyr Gibbs. And this is in a season, by the way, where they struggled at times on defense, giving up big plays. They struggled at the wide receiver position. They struggled to block on the offensive line. And so, yes, I inherently trust Alabama, but at some point, like, we do actually have to look at the stuff that happens on the field. And as we discussed on this show all season long, you could argue that this was the most underachieving, disappointing team of the Nick Saban era. Doesn't mean that Nick Saban is not great. It just means that this particular group underachieved, and I'm tired of giving them the benefit of the doubt. So I'll be curious to see what happens in the offseason with Alabama. One, who wins that starting quarterback job? Is it Jalen Milroe, who we saw a little bit this year when Bryce Young got hurt? Is it Ty Simpson, redshirt, who was on the roster this year? Is it somebody that enters the portal that we don't even know about yet? Fascinating to see what happens there. And then I think what's also fascinating about Alabama, what happens with the coordinator position? So I think I saw on Monday, Matt Patricia was fired by the New England Patriots. It feels like Bill O'Brien's going to New England. So who does Nick Saban hire as offensive coordinator? How do they develop the quarterback position? That is what is going to be interesting to me about Alabama. I'll say this. If everything clicks for Alabama next year, they are, of course, good enough to win a national championship. It's worth noting they just signed one of the historically great recruiting classes this offseason, so you know they're bringing in a bunch of talent. But again, it's got to click. It's got to come together. If it does, Alabama can win a title. That's a wait-and-see thing for me, though. I have Alabama at number 4. Number 5, I will give a little bit of a benefit of the doubt to another program, the Ohio State Buckeyes. I actually think there's another team in the Big Ten that's really interesting besides Michigan that we're going to talk about in a minute. But for right now, I will put Ohio State ahead of them. Obviously, yes, they are coming off a second straight loss to Michigan, second straight non-Big Ten championship. But, and this is important, they also made the college football playoff and showed that when they were at their best, they were as good as anybody. They obviously played Georgia tougher than anybody this entire season. What'll be interesting about Ohio State, they do lose C.J. Stroud. Quarterback is the one spot that Ryan Day never seems to miss a beat. Kyle McCord is expected to be the starter there next year. So I'm not really worried about the quarterback position, especially since he's going to have 2 elite wide receivers in Marvin Harrison and Emeka Egbuka. You're going to have a great running back in Travion Henderson. Hopefully he gets back healthy. But listen, we kind of know what's at stake for Ohio State going into next year. Got to win the Big Ten. Got to beat Michigan. The Michigan game is on the road, and you got to get back to competing for championships because it's obviously been a tough couple weeks for Ryan Day. To his credit, I think he silenced a lot of the doubters with that Ohio State performance against Georgia in the college football playoff. But you got to come back with a little bit more in 2023 and stake your claim as the best team in the Big Ten. And number 6, this is a team that I kind of feel like sometimes we get too caught up in what we just saw, okay? So, like, I'll give you an example not related to the number 6 team in my poll, but like TCU. Everyone on Monday, TCU didn't deserve to be here. What does that mean they didn't deserve to be there? They went 12-0 in the regular season. They got the number 3 seed. They beat Michigan. They deserve to be there. It just so happened that they were not prepared to play Georgia. Doesn't mean they didn't deserve to be there, even if they got their brains beaten. And so why I bring it up is because the number 6 team in my poll, I think, is completely being undervalued based on the most recent performance that we saw. And that's the USC Trojans. And what I want you to do is take a 30,000-foot holistic view on USC. Don't just focus on what you just saw the last time they were on the field. Because if you think about the last year for USC, a year ago, even 11 months ago when Caleb Williams committed, I think we all sort of understood that in year one, it was going to be a rebuild. Most USC people would tell you, now they might change their opinion now, but they would have told you at the time, if we can go 9-3 this year, because the defense isn't going to be good, the O-line isn't going to be good. If we can go 9-3, that's a successful season for us. Instead, they go 11-1 in the regular season. The problem was they get destroyed in the Pac-12 championship game. They don't get destroyed in the Cotton Bowl, but they lose in the Cotton Bowl because the defense melts down. Well, wasn't that what we were kind of expecting the entire season? So to me, what I learned this year, I think people are undervaluing USC, because what I learned this year is that if you have Caleb Williams and you have Lincoln Riley, 11 wins is the baseline minimum. 11 wins is the minimum. And the upside is the defense should be a little bit better. You know, they will find someone in the portal. There's all sorts of rumors over who Lincoln Riley and his staff may be trying to convince. Wink, wink, nod, nod. You didn't hear it from me, to enter the portal. So USC is going to get players. And they were 11-1 with Caleb Williams this year. I just can't freak out. I can't overreact to that Tulane game. Take the 30,000-foot view. Understand where they started the season. I have USC at number 6. Number 7. This is a team that I think if everything breaks their way, they might be the dark horse playoff contender next year. Now, I don't know if they can win the championship, but it's the Penn State Nittany Lions, and it has nothing to do with the Rose Bowl. Instead, a couple things. One, ding dong, the witch is gone. Okay, I'm not going to say the other word, ding dong, the witch is whatever, because I'm not wishing ill will upon anybody. But Penn State fans have been waiting for a while for Sean Clifford to leave. It's no disrespect. 6-year player, third, fourth year starter this year. The program had a ceiling with him at quarterback, and he just wasn't good enough in big games. Well, he's gone. You're going to replace him with 5-star Drew Allaire, who is really highly touted. A lot of people really think quite a bit about him. They think he's the best quarterback Penn State has had in years, almost like their version of J.J. McCarthy. On top of that, you bring back basically 1,000-yard rushers. Nick Singleton was a 1,000-yard rusher, Nicholas Singleton. Katron Allen had about 900 yards. And on defense, you return your 2 best edge rushers in Abdul Carter and Chop Robinson. And so when I look at Penn State, if the quarterback is as good as we think he could be, Penn State could be your dark horse in the Big Ten. Also, it would certainly help if Jim Harbaugh left Michigan, which again, that's how it appears to be trending. So keep an eye on Penn State. I think this is an interesting one. They are worth monitoring. Number 8, this is the internet's team. I call it whenever a team is loved by everyone on the internet, I call them the internet team. And the internet team right now is the Florida State Seminoles, but I tend to agree. I think Florida State should be really interesting next year. So Florida State this year, and it was funny, right? Because they beat Oklahoma in their bowl game to go to 10-3. And I said, keep an eye. They'll start next year in the top 15. I saw some too early top 25s have them at like number 4 overall. That feels a little aggressive to me, but they won 10 games this year. They won 6 straight to end the season. Their last loss was to Clemson, who was the ACC champ in a game that they largely outplayed them. And there probably isn't a team that has had better, I don't know. I'm trying to figure out the right word. They've had a ton of success convincing guys that could leave for the pros to return. Jared Verse, defensive end, could have gone, would have been probably a first-round pick. He's coming back. Jordan Travis, the quarterback, is coming back. And they did a really good job in the portal like they always do. First-team All-ACC corner, Fentrell Cypress, who was at Virginia, is coming. A couple other impact guys there. And I'll tell you, Florida State, very manageable schedule as always in the ACC. Now, it's worth noting, they do open next year against LSU. Remember, they played LSU to open this past season. That game was in New Orleans. This one is in Orlando. It's more in Seminole country. That will be your marquee opening weekend game for college football next year. I think both teams start in the top 10. I have Oregon at number 8. Number 9, I'll be quick. Florida State, I have at number 8. Oregon at number 9. And this one will be quick because everybody else is saying it. Listen, the biggest recruit that they got this offseason, Bo Nix, is back. 5th year at starter. He was really good this year. I know a lot of SEC fans listening are saying, Bo Nix, what are you talking about? He was really good this year for Florida State, or for Oregon. Now I'm tripping up on Florida State and Oregon. You get the point. He played at Oregon. We're talking about Oregon. Let's talk Oregon. Beyond Bo Nix, though, what I would say about Dan Lanning and what he did this offseason, I think you can argue that nobody had a better offseason in all facets in terms of getting returning players back. We just talked about Bo Nix, high school recruiting and portal recruiting, okay? High school recruiting, we know they got a commitment from Mateo Uiagalelei, the brother of DJ, a defensive end from California. A couple other big names had already been committed. And then in the portal, they really plugged some holes. AJ Cornelius, a tackle from Rhode Island, was one of the highest coveted offensive linemen in the portal. He's coming. Trayshawn Holden, former Alabama wide receiver, he's coming. So I got Oregon at number 9. And then quickly at number 10, it's Notre Dame. And what I would just say about Notre Dame, listen, we all know the deal with Notre Dame, right? Defense has been good for years. Run game has been good for years. They have not been able to figure out the quarterback position, or at the very least, they haven't been able to get the quarterback that they need to take them to the next level. Well, they just got a commitment from Sam Hartman, the quarterback from Wake Forest. This year, 3,700 yards passing, 38 touchdowns. This after throwing for 39 touchdowns in 2021. This guy is dynamic. This guy is a fun quarterback. If he's as good as we think he could be, Notre Dame has a chance to be really good. I'll quickly go through a couple others. Tennessee at number 11 comes down to the quarterback, right? Joe Milton, is he good? Is he not? Number 12, I do have Clemson. Listen, I would add Clemson higher, but Cade Klubnik was supposed to be the savior. He looked largely overwhelmed in the Orange Bowl. Washington, number 13, 11-win season for Washington. Michael Penix, their quarterback, is back. Texas at number 14. I know everyone's going to make the Texas is back jokes, but the bottom line is, look, returning quarterbacks, skill position guys, young offensive line. We'll see. And oh, by the way, they improved from 5 to 8 wins this year. Let's see if they can keep it going. Number 15 is Utah. 16, Wisconsin, a little higher than most. I like the Luke Fickell higher, obviously. Ole Miss at 17, I think, is really interesting. Lane Kiffin, we got to remember, basically had to replace most of his frontline players this year. Everyone's going to say, oh, he went 8-4 and he lost a bunch of games late. He had to replace everybody. Well, this year, he goes into next year. Jackson Dart is his quarterback. Quinshon Judkins, the running back, is a superstar. I got Ole Miss at 17. 18, TCU. They're self-explanatory. 19, Tulane, just beat USC in the Cotton Bowl. 20, Oregon State. Remember, Oregon State has DJ Uiagalelei as their quarterback, and they return pretty much everybody else off of a 10-win team. Keep it going. 21, this is where it gets controversial. Texas A&M Aggies. I know everyone's going to be, oh, Jimbo, he's so overrated, blah, 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 blah. What you need to know about Jimbo. They went 5-7 this past year. 5 of their 7 losses were by a touchdown or less. If they're literally a play or two better in 5 games, they could be 10-2. So I think they're at very least an 8-4 type team next year. I got Texas A&M at 21, Kentucky at 22. That's due largely to Devin Leary, the quarterback coming in, Liam Cohen returning as the offensive coordinator. That became official on Tuesday. UCLA at number 23, Baylor 24, Kansas State 25.